Hi, I'm Sam Middleton, and this is my ALC201 Assignment 2. I'm going to talk about museums and the way that new media and new technology has influenced the way that we interact with them and the way that museums present themselves as a result. As media technology has developed, museums have felt the need to refresh themselves and keep themselves updated to appeal to the new audiences and audiences that are increasingly technology dependent. New media technologies are being used in conjunction with their exhibitions to engage audiences and to encourage a level of interaction and perceived participation. New media has been utilized by museums as both supplementary material to what their exhibits already display, as well as new interactive exhibits to engage their audiences into the content in a new and seemingly refreshingly engaging way. While there has been many positives as to the use of new media and new media technologies to engage new audiences, there is also a series of concerns and essentially worries about the impact that technology has on a social setting that has historically been relatively technology free in the way that we interact and experience it. Concerns expressed about the inclusion of new media into museums range from a certain devaluation of the educational content provided by museums and their traditional experience of new media essentially cheapening or devaluing the educational message sent by museums. Other concerns include the museum's physical place within society as a place of social congregation and discussion versus what a digital reproduction of what a museum contains and that value that it would have upon society. On the subject of new media being used as supplementary interactive material to physical museum exhibits as well as solely interactive exhibits, Heath and von Lem suggest that social interaction is critical as to how people experience museums and galleries. They suggest that interactivity within new media exhibits does not necessarily mean social interaction. They say this because the interaction involved is simply between the user and the exhibit, not between the user, the exhibit, and the people around them. Essentially, there is no discussion of what is happening. The educational value of the new media being utilized is purely to educate the individual. It sort of takes them out of the social setting that they are in. Essentially, in Heath and von Lem's view, it encouraged an individualistic way of being educated in a museum in what otherwise should be a social setting. The difference between the two, I'd assume, is that if someone was to see a physical museum piece, they'd be standing next to and around people. For example, if the people were to go to a museum exhibition or an exhibit with their family, they would stand around the exhibit, observe it, communicate with each other. What do you see? What don't you see? What do you think of this? On the other hand, is if a supplementary, say, a video or an interactive tablet was placed in front of an exhibit, only one person, maybe two people, would be able to read it at a time, and they read it at their own pace. This creates a degree of disconnect between a simple discussion and a simple observation of what's happening and sort of learning through discussing versus simply going somewhere and learning for themselves. Part of the situation is that writers have accepted that the museum has long been a place of communal gathering and discussion. Batista agrees with Heath and von Lem in suggesting that the museum has that historical and social significance. However, in contrast to von Lem and Heath, Batista suggests that consumers and audiences have adapted to new media in relation to museums with relatively open arms. Von Lem and Heath were very critical of its ability to educate people, suggesting that people would often spend more time worrying about the new media itself rather than the educational content, of operating these interactive exhibits, rather than getting the message behind them. However, Batista somewhat counters that by saying is that people, for example, when they would download an app of a museum, in the case presented in class would be the Jewish Holocaust app. Essentially what she suggests is that people would rather, well, probably not would rather, but would some people would rather openly take up the app, use the app, and get whatever they can from that, and then somewhat lose interest in wanting to go to the physical museum. And to be honest, in some regards, I agree with that. Personally, having gone through the Jewish Holocaust Center application myself, I sort of get the feeling that with what the museum has presented in their app, tells me a lot of what, for the most part, I need to know about what their message is and what they hope to present. But at the same time, it also does present the same problems that Heath and Von Lem suggested, is that rather interpersonal sort of that sort of one-way communication between what the museum is telling me and my own understanding of it. It sort of takes away the communal nature of it. I mean that by, if I was to go through this application and read it myself, if I was to suggest any information or, sort of tell or discuss with any information that I may have learnt from the app, it would sort of fall on deaf ears a little bit, because people around me wouldn't have seen it. Only I have. I've only the only person that's downloaded the app. If they were to do it later on, that's a bit different, because they would have done it at a different time frame. We're not in the museum together talking about the exhibit together. So at the same time, while it does have a particular value in that wherever I am, for example, right now in my room, I can learn all about the Jewish Holocaust Museum without actually having to go there. That's a benefit. But I understand at the same time is that there is that negative effect, because we lose a sense of the social interactions that really sort of helps people learn and get excited about learning things. In that you visit it with people, you discuss things.